Bona tarda, benvinguts, benvingudes a la tercera i última sessió del cicle de la imatge construïda, organitzat per ARQUIN-FAD i comissariat per Postlike i Aramé Studio, i també gràcies a la Virreina per cedir-nos espai. Com sabeu, cada sessió d'aquest cicle ha tingut un caràcter totalment diferent. Vam tenir una conversa amb Sprinsen i Kerstengers fa 2 setmanes. Aquesta setmana un cadàver exquí amb Bleda i Rosa, Simone Marcolin, del Rio Bane i Cecilia Coca. I avui, en aquesta darrera sessió, fem un salt per reflexionar sobre el pes de la imatge virtual i la cultura del render en aquesta nova era, on inclús la IA pot acabar esdevenint una eina per la reflexió del procés creatiu des de disseny i la concepció. Tenim el plaer de tenir Adrien Verschuere i Olivier Campagne com a ponents aquesta vegada i per primera vegada a Barcelona. Abans, però, tindrem una presentació per un ambaixador que ha fet possible que tot sigui avui possible aquí, ERCO. Passaré a l'anglès perquè si no, no m'entendran cap dels ponents. It's a pleasure to be representing the last of the sessions of the circle that we've titled The Constructed Image, Reality and Fiction in Contemporary Architecture. To do so, we have invited architects, photographers and artists to participate in a debate between those who generate the images and those who project the spaces. As mentioned, ERCO has accompanied and supported us from the beginning, and with whom today we will explore new tools for one of the most important elements in photography and imagery, light. I'm pleased to introduce Thomas Schilke, architect and lighting design trainer at ERCO. Thomas is a specialist in lighting design and communication. He has delivered lectures at institutions such as Harvard and MIT and participated in panels on the relation between light and architecture. He will deliver an initial presentation through a dynamic demonstration of the impact of light in various atmospheres. Us deixo amb Thomas Schilke. Gràcies.
Thank you very much for the introduction. How do we construct images? How do we construct spaces? We think that light is very powerful to construct spaces. And there are different ways to use light to create powerful images. Here we have a view of the John Curtin Gallery in Perth, Australia, where light is there to focus. A very famous lighting designer spoke about focal glow as one of the 3 basic types to illuminate architectural spaces and create powerful images. With the contrast of shadow and brightness very intense here, we can see that light can draw attention to something. Coming from above, like the moment when we have noon, the sun comes very strong and the shadow is just below us. And it's a separation of little islands we could create. But it's always about the people who are enjoying the spaces. For that reason, we at ERCO have collaborated for several decades with photographers and have defined how we would like to show and to inspire people with photography. For that reason, we are not going to the conventional architecture photography, waiting for the moment when the building will be open, the people have not moved in, and there will be no people. No, we think that spaces are there for people. So always you will find some people, how they experience the space and the light. This could be in a fine arts gallery, for example, or this could be in a commercial context like we will face for Christmas doing shopping, because their light is there also to enhance merchandise and to separate between the important and the less important and to create powerful spaces and to create attention to draw the information. And it allows us really to point out what is important. And here we have the light, and you could see the similar effect there on the sculpture illustrating this in a powerful way. But light is there as well to have maybe even a wider illumination like we could see it here, because we would like to invite people to enjoy light, not only to focus, because sometimes when we have a very strong focus and shadow, it's an exaggeration of a specific object in your space for interior design. And then we can gather around light and create a very interesting impression of the space. But from time to time, we would like to have the focal glow in a very intense impression of a space. And that's the moment when we have the inspiration from stage lighting really to alter the perception of an object. And you have already seen that we have changed the light from the side. And this is not something we would say it's not typical for architecture. We can find this in the museum landscape. For example, in this photo by Moritz Hillebrand, who waits for the moment when a person comes in there, playing with the distinctive shadows coming from above there, and then creating a black and white, a bright and dark face there for the main sculpture. And if you go upstairs to the exhibition, you can see the power of shadow, which gives a very symbolic impression to a sculpture, for example, and highlighting elements and speaking about the power which is there. Or we can even go to the next moment and see that with the shadow, we can create very large shadows and even exaggerating something and project another image, the silhouette image, on an object, on the architecture. This could be done in a small scale with interior design elements, furniture's inner space, or it could be done larger. Or if this is too extreme, we can go to the next light scene and see the illumination from the side and from above to have a more balanced impression of the space. And this shows the power, how these kind of images could inspire people to come up with interesting solutions to great spaces. And there's the second category Richard Kelly was speaking about, and you feel a different atmosphere in the space. It widens up, it becomes larger. And here, Simon Alford from the UK studio in London, AHMM, had seen the iconic image from Frank Lloyd Wright and the Johnson Wax building, where you have the high room with the columns there, the daylight coming from above. Everything is really filled with daylight. And he had this photo and experience in mind and said, I would like to bring this into my office. And in London, could find some underground spaces which you would say it's not possible to work there. But he says every room can become magical. And he converted this underground basement into his office there. And with the power of light, you can see that this kind of underground space could be transformed in a dynamic space. You have the walls illuminated similar to here to widen up the space, and he even added an indirect lighting and small windows there, some skylights coming in there. And what we know that the light changes during the day from a very cool light to a warm light in the evening, and he can adjust this. So having these images from nature, he transferred there to his interior space to offer the people an attractive workplace, because from the times of Corona, we know workplaces needs to be more attractive than your living room. And that's not possible if you just have a grid of light panels in the ceiling, so really working with interesting spaces. Or when it comes to public buildings, we can imagine, for example, that we have a library, and can you just go to the next slide, please? Which is filled up, and this idea from Richard Kelly about ambient luminescence is really that you don't distinguish the floor, the wall, and the ceiling. So it's a moment when you go maybe to the mountains with snow, and then you have the cloud there, that you can't really say where the horizon is, and you create different images. And these kinds of images have inspired many architects to build spaces there, and it looks a little bit like M.C. Escher with his perspective style going up and down the stairs and altering the shape of the architecture there. And here nicely done with a kind of washing the walls with light to create really a whiteness, but at the same time it's not only enhancing the architecture, it's also allowing you to read the books which are there in the bookshelves. Or we come to a different space where architects have used images, figures, paintings. It was in the 1930s in the Paris Museum with Raoul Dufy, where he created the story of electricity. It was a time when you would have wished to have a media facade with a LED screen changing. But in the 1930s, it's now based on ceramics there and telling a story and using the color now. So before it was just the pure white walls, and we see a simple alteration of spaces where we think they become be more emotional when we see that it's getting a little bit more colorful. And when we go to the next slide, we see like the Botanical Visitor Center in Missouri. We have spaces where the clients say, I need to change the atmosphere. For the daily exhibitions and welcoming visitors, that's quite strong and powerful. But there are moments when we need really to have a different atmosphere, maybe for special events and galas and to invite people. And we see this in the next slide, and the lighting scene also changing in this room. And we feel now there's something different in this space. Richard Kelly calls this play of brilliance. It's not about the function anymore. It doesn't really help to see you better in any way. It's the emotional part. When we just look outside to the Christmas lighting in the streets of Barcelona, we see this moment having these kind of urban crystal chandeliers there, sparking, giving a very vibrant impression of a space. And the power of light is it's very easy to just make a small press on an app and change the light scene steps by step. And this is possible, for example, to do for public buildings. If we look for the next slide, we could even imagine there to go into the exterior space to illuminate a building to create some powerful nighttime atmosphere, which is adjusted from the light levels to have this magical impression. It's the blue hour where we like to have to calm down, but always thinking about a second element to balance this and to make compositions more attractive. For that reason, the moment of focal glow is over there with the warrior which is visible there. So thinking about layers of light is a way how we think and construct images and spaces. And this could be done with some kind of uniformity, or we can go to the next scene. And this is a tower from my hometown. It's a science museum where it's possible with the membrane to illuminate it from the inside and carefully watch that we do not work on big images projected into the sky of over-illumination, just a softly glow and altering the light scenes going one to the other. We have seen in the Paris Museum that images were projected on the architecture. Here the architects decided to reveal the architectural structure with a diffuse illumination of the membrane, and that you can see the architectural structure. Other architects prefer to work more directly with images, and this is visible in many media facades around the world, but then images fade over the time, and the question is, are actual there? Do they relate to do they have a timestamp there? And for that reason, some architects calm a little bit down and don't want to have too many images on the architecture. So for that reason, it's a very slow graduation from one scene to the image to the next one. But constructing different images with one architectural building based on light. And that's the reason why we think that light is the fourth dimension of architecture, with the power to softly change either from the direction of light, of the brightness levels of light, or, for example, for the colors, and to create this very powerful overview and alteration of architecture. As a very special gift now, and you might be a little bit curious to play around with light, I have a special gift for you, and if you scan this QR code, you're able to take a little light at home. So we are giving you one task light called Lucy. Lucy comes from the Latin name lux, luminaire, and this is a possibility to enrich the lighting on your office desk in your studio, or maybe in your home office. When you scan the QR code, then you have a short form, fill in your name and your email address, and that's possible then that we can pick you out and that we send you a luminaire there for illuminating your little Christmas table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas, for this presentation. Now it's time to present this last session titled Paradigm Shift. Today we will explore the virtual image and its importance in the creative and research process of architecture. To address this topic, it is an honor to introduce Adrien Verschuere and Olivier Campagne, who are here with us today. I'm sure many of you already know their work, but for those who may not be as familiar, let me briefly introduce them. Olivier Campagne is a French architect and visual artist who specializes in digital visualization for architecture. As a co-founder and former partner of Artefactory Lab until 2022, he contributed significantly to the field. Since 2023, he has been running his own studio, where he collaborates with numerous architectural teams, including Moto Studio, Bruyter Architecture, Baukunst, GNWA, Arhofreak, and 10. His hyperrealistic images have not only enhanced the design processes of these architects, but also influenced how their work is perceived. Campagne's work has been showcased in various exhibitions and publications, such as several issues of El Croquis. Additionally, he regularly participates as a visiting expert in workshops at ETH Zurich under the chair of Alexandre Thériault. Adrien Verschuere studies in architecture at École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. In 2010, he founded the architecture firm Baukunst in Brussels, and in 2017 in Lausanne. To complete practice, he regularly is invited as guest critic or lecturer in various institutions, among others, Berlage Institute, UCI Academia Mendrisio, Kyoto Design Lab, University of Tokyo, ETH Zurich. From 2019, he's visiting professor at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne in Switzerland. Baukunst, combining arts and technology, dialoguing and interplaying various forms of knowledge. Baukunst is committed to explore architecture as a medium with which both to think about buildings, Bau, as well as to build ways of thinking, Kunst. Baukunst and Olivier Campagne have collaborated in several projects, such as La Défense in Paris, Traveling Theatre, Addis Ababa, Zoo Campus Winterthur, among others. We asked them to freely present a collaborative presentation of their approach of the topic that I'm sure we would be delighted to hear about. Please welcome on stage Adrien and Olivier Campagne.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Andrea, Marina, Laura. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's not an easy thing to prepare a kind of a joint presentation, and it's even more difficult, I would say, to talk about process not being too boring. But we will try tonight to, let's say, discuss about the importance of images in our work. So I will ask you to be a bit indulgent in a way that we collect images, and I think we will try to speak on our own position regarding the images. By collecting somehow those images together, we kind of realized that we were already collaborating together for more than 10 years. And I think this is also kind of a nice moment to kind of also go back to certain images and certain consideration about the images. We would like to maybe to propose that we make first a bit of an introduction about how we see the image, both from an architectural perspective and from the perspective of Olivier. And then we can show some images. We would like also to speak about one or two projects, not for themselves, but to understand how we work together and how, let's say, the image is embedded in the way we try to think about architecture. So let me start. These are very late images we did before we met with Olivier. We were always kind of fascinated by the power of image, and when we started the practice quite a long time ago, there was a point where, let's say, Photoshop was more and more present in architectural offices. And then the question, how do we kind of work with images? Do we accept to work with images, or do we reject, let's say, the image? And from the very early on, we decided to accept the images and to try to work with the image. And I guess this is also why we kind of at some point collaborate together to say that the images is not results, Of course, obviously, on certain case, it is for certain competitions or for certain projects. But from the beginning on, we try to incorporate the images as well as other tools of making architectural, like models and drawings. And these are two collages that we did quite a long time ago, a competition and a project for a house, that try to also work a bit differently by, let's say, putting images together and then by creating, let's say, the narrative of the image through the manipulation of images. Next. This is another work, and this is basically the first commission of the office. Since we start, we didn't have any commission, any client. We decided to make our own client and our own images. And these were part of a series we called Urban Portrait. So we decided to work at the scale of cities because we were wondering if architects could still say something about cities. And then we were trying to let's say, as a methodology, to work a bit differently as what we saw as making images. Let's say that we try to subtract things instead of adding things. As an architect, we're always asking to add things or to kind of transform the existing things. And this is, for instance, an image we created quite a long time ago in Paris, where we remove all the, let's say, important monuments and we replace them by park. So I'm showing these images just to make you understand that, let's say, this is maybe the meeting point at some point with Olivier, that we try to, let's say, question through the images certain condition of the project. Next.
Okay, so that's my part, that's my turn. Yeah, so the image you presented was things you did yeah, some time ago, and I think I was doing this almost at the same time. This is like more than 13 years ago. That's an animation I did. It was more a vision. I had of Paris being underwater, but it was not some kind of catastrophic vision, or even at that time some kind of message that now could be taken differently. It was more, in my mind, maybe it was more a psychological vision somehow, some kind of link very to myself, and also I was imagining like this almost like a pure plane cutting the city and reflecting his image. So it's a bit like an image within an image. So it could have been something else than water, actually. And so that was like, this is like project I'm doing, like, let's say on the side, because my main, I'm let's say somebody would call like 3D render. I'm basically running a 3D rendering jobs, and this is, for me, it's more a passion to work on that stuff. And so while preparing the presentation, I think that I came to the conclusion that I have this thematic about ambiguity, like the ambiguity in the image I'm doing, because I'm always trying to make things ambiguous. Is it there? It's not there. Try to push that point, and also my position is very ambiguous in the project, in the process of the project, because it's I'm not a photographer, and I'm not. I'm coming at the end of the project. I'm not conceiving the project, so it's really difficult sometimes to talk about the project because it's not my project. So, and it's always difficult to put myself in the position. So in a way, I like that ambiguity. So if we go to the next slide,
it's maybe funny because I think when we discovered this movie, we were also doing the previous images that I was showing before, and then we said we should work together. I mean, somehow, because what I like about the movie is that it really kind of changed the status of things, and this is what we tried also to do with the previous image of Paris, and this is what we also consider as a kind of a important point as an architect, to be able to change the status of things, and being able to do it through images. We were fascinated by this, and this is basically a bit the starting of the collaboration also. And
if we go to the next, Yeah, it's also, I mean, just about that movie was okay 13 years ago, but I mean, now I get more, I get different feedback from that project. But like a few years ago, somebody thought it was an actual movie of a recent flood in Paris. So it's kind of this ambiguous state. It's interesting. And I'm just showing here some few images, more recent stuff I'm doing on the side of my daily, let's say, render stuff. It's more, yeah. I've tried to think about like the way we represent things in the computer, and this is actually what I call a computer photography. So it's not an actual rendering. It's really it's an image that was fabricated within the rendering software by optics. It's like it's this image coming, and it's basically if you take a camera obscura, you build it in the computer, in the rendering software, and then I put my virtual camera inside the box, and this is the image that's coming. It's like the image is formed by the rendering itself. It's, I mean, by the calculation. It's yeah. So it takes quite some time to render, and it's also it's quite complex to do because this is also it's a photography of a photogrammetric 3D model done in a street of Paris. So it's computer photography of photogrammetry. So I like to make it complicated like that. And so if we go to the next one, and this is more like, let's say, more architectural images, and I like to show that image of El Croquis because it's also very ambiguous. And I didn't knew that they were putting that image in the cover, so I think it was interesting for me to see that they choose that image to that for that publication. It's also saying something about the statue of images during that. Sorry. Yeah, during that time. Sorry, I have to watch. It's better. Sorry. Yeah. So El Croquis. Yeah, it was also this ambiguity status of the image. It's like we know that we have more and more images around us, and so that's maybe telling about something about us. And the right one is also a recent project, and here I'm more and more linked to photography, and this is an image where I don't put the project really in the foreground. It's like I try to really also do more and more photography. So the project here is a bit in the background of the, but still there in the context. And if we go to the next, and also in the same trajectory, like this is a work done with the photographer Julien Ourcade, and about a project. So that's the red building you see in the image, and here it's the subject. It's not the subject. We don't know. It's a portrait already, but the building is there in the background, blurred, out of focus. So the red building doesn't exist. It's on top of an existing building, and this image is also coming with a series of 30 images. So I just show one like this. Yeah. And then go to the next. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, quickly. This is also a series we did with Olivier about continuing a bit this idea of reflecting on the cities. It's a bit of a research about how, let's say, cities could respond to, let's say, certain climatic issues. We could go to the next one. I will not maybe explain too much the project, but just to say that somehow the meeting point is not necessarily only about making these architectural images. Next. This is also back from the archive, probably one of the first movies we did together. It's a bit of a funny story. It's very not very visible, but we asked Maxime Delvaux, who's a photographer with whom we worked for even more longer than Olivier, to shoot the garden. This is a bit of a collage of some existing images that you see on the left side, and then Olivier modelized the machine that you see at the back. So it's a project for a small museum in Belgium that would not really explain, but what we like in this image is this kind of primitive way to do it, although it's very sophisticated the way it's built. And also the kind of collaboration between Maxime, us, and Olivier. Next. Yeah. And maybe just to also relate to the first images I was showing, as an architect, we were always very interested about, let's say, almost curating the architectural elements. This is a project, a small community center that we won a few years ago that kind of tried to, let's say, conceptually put different elements together, existing elements, as you see, the beam, the glass facade, this water tank. And this is basically why we kind of also work with Olivier to try to kind of limit the number of decisions of making the image. So this is just one more example about this idea of a bit of a montage. We kind of like this idea. Maybe next one I don't remember.
But even this one, if we come back, this image is also in itself. It's a montage of three different places.
Yeah.
Like, can we come back to the previous one? Yeah, this one is it's a project in Belgium, right? And I also, for the same reason, I really need sometimes to work with photography. So that image is made of two photography in the back. It's like a place in Paris. I need to have trees in the back. So and the foreground is also a different place. So I like to work also that way, like a collage. As you say, maybe it's a collage also in architecture. It's also done that way in the image itself. And so there is three elements there.
If we come back to the previous one, this is a more recent project, and we wanted to show these images also as a kind of way to show the idea of montage of different situations, different elements, and this is also perhaps related to the idea of architecture as being much more close to somehow cinema also, that we kind of try to make images and architecture not too much by inventing new elements, but by creating kind of new situation where we put, let's say, different elements that we know, but in differently, so it can kind of create another story, another architectural idea. We can go next. And then we kind of continue, I think, the work of Maxime Delvaux, who's a photographer, as I was telling, a Belgian photographer with whom we worked a long time ago. At some point, he went on a building site and he started to make movies, very subtle movies, like you see here, where static position, static light, and then that was a bit also the starting point of another type of collaboration with Olivier, where we try to also expand a bit this idea of fixed images and going back to, let's say, more cinematographic idea of images. Next.
Yeah, that's, for example, that's for a project in, it was an itinerary theater, and so that the roof can lift like this with like a scissor lift, and so also in my work I try to be really precise, and I almost like things, even here it's an animation, but it was also used for a still image, and I like to make things precise so it looks like it could work actually. So and also animated, even if the final image it's not animated, but it's there, it's working somehow. And if we go to the next, so it's test. This is like a test rendering. We don't. Yeah, sorry. Wait, maybe we see it later. The movie, the Arsenic. So it's the same here, like in Zurich, this moving curtain in this public space, and I mean, you don't probably see it, but the curtain is actually rolling around. It's actually working. It's the only way to make it look okay. It likes to really make it as it should be. So sometimes I have to invent. I have to guess how things could work, and this is happening with you, and also with Bretter and other architects. Like the drawing is not sufficient, so you need to make things work also. So especially when you do animation like this.
If we go to the next one. I guess in this project, images, let's say moving or image in motion were also important. This is, of course, not an image from Olivier, but this is just showing also that by trying to incorporate image in motion, we can try to also speak about other aspects of the project, like here, the wind condition of the project. Next. This is again the same image as before. I guess, of course, there is the night condition coming. It's probably also nice to understand that this is a picture or a movie that is done by Walter Mehr, a Swiss photographer, that kind of walk around the site, and then let's say the choice of the viewpoint and then the way we kind of stage the project is also super important. Next, maybe we can come to this. This choice of viewpoint, it's like almost in every project now. I have this kind of method of really exploring the views, because that's for me one of the most important thing in making this type of images is the viewpoint and choosing the right framing to tell the story about the project. And so that I remember that project. It's a small observation tower, right, on the beach in Belgium. And so that image is from Maxime, and I think I remember he sent me like 70 photos he took of the site while walking there and trying to guess where the project could sit. Or I mean, it's also this collaboration, even if it's not happening at the same time. He's doing his part of the photography, and I basically take all this material. And I say, okay, that's difficult to visualize. So let's do the 70 images and put the project inside, and let's see, almost like if he was there when he was shooting, even if it's not working like this. But I thought that maybe that's interesting, because anyway, when I was placing the rock, I could be a bit more free, of course, on the position. So I also, it's not like a perfect insertion of an object. You also move it where you want. You know that you have this. It's on the bank of the beach, so you have this 1 degree of liberty, and then you can place it where you want in the image. So it's quite intensive process, this, but I try to develop some kind of automatic process. Like it's actually an animation. This. It's like you work frame by frame, so you can render. Basically, to render that, you render a movie. So it's like stop motion somehow, and so that's the way to deal with multiple images. So if we go to the next, so that's the final. I would say that the moment where Maxime goes on site, where we kind of have this discussion, it's also, I mean, the making of the image. It's like usually we start to make the image very early in the process. Sometimes it changes a lot, the project. Just by going around, we kind of realize, of course, it's not necessarily the good choices that we did. But it's also a way to rediscover. And it's also, let's say, a bit the discussion we are having with Maxime. When you take picture of buildings, it's always a kind of way to try to rediscover what we try to do. And this is, let's say, more the final image. What we can like also in this is that the image of Olivier, they are super precise, and sometimes when we zoom in, it's almost nicer. The detail is nicer than the project somehow. I mean, we're gonna see that a bit later on, also on some other project. But we were very fascinated by the quality of the image, and this is coming back maybe to the first point I was trying to say. It's like, at the very beginning, we didn't try to escape too much from the image, but we tried to kind of see what the image could, let's say, how image can challenge architecture, and how can we, let's say, by using the precision of images, or let's say this hyperrealistic status of images, how ultimately this could give a certain intensity. And this is basically what we look for from all the images. Sometimes they are a bit more successful, sometimes less, about trying to capture, let's say, this very moment of intensity, what we try to do as an architect, I guess. Next.
And also, and sorry about this project. Also, the difficulty was that you, on your side, it was difficult for you to make the object.
Yeah.
So I remember I could have shown it, but I remember like sending you like 3D models, images of rocks. So it's not something I model. It's like from a library. So basically there was a kind of casting of rocks, as you can. So I send you like multiple rocks, shapes, and and then after you decided we cut it and put that kind of I don't know what's the name on the rocks.
Joints or
joints, yeah. So yeah. And that's the Arsenic project. It's this itinerary theater, and that time I managed. I mean, I did the shooting of the for that video, and so you see on the left the spot empty, and it's in the Louvre in Paris. And I like to show that because it's also like just to showing that it's sometimes really straightforward. It's like I'm not going to spend the time to drawing the shadow of the roof. And so I saw that images, and I said, okay, that's the shadow of the roof, and it's actually a shadow of the tower in the Louvre. So, but because like people going through the shadow are suddenly in the shadow and in the sun, so that's completely crazy to do in rendering, compositing, whatever. So it's really a collage here. It's like really straightforward. And I like this way of working because it's technically possible. And, yeah.
Next. This is again another project,
yes.
maybe just to show. It's again a movie from Maxime. It's kind of nice because sometimes Maxime goes on site. Of course, he has to visualize the project, but the project is not there. So it's a bit funny because sometimes he comes back with images where the project is not part of the image. But and so just to say that it's again what is nice is the discussion around the project. Next.
But also, I mean, this type of this type of work is of course it's. Yeah, it's quite a lot of task of cutting out stuff from the video, like the tram and even like people like the scooter passing in front, people walking in front. It's like I remember at the beginning of the project I start to cut legs of people, and then at one point I say, okay, I need to erase people because it's too much. It's like so there is actually few people, but there was much more people.
Next. Maybe I can show you a bit more in an extensive way another project. I mean, I will not present everything. This is a project that we won 2017. It's under construction at the moment. So it's a building in Brussels at the crossover between the highway that you see and the main boulevard. Next. We wanted to show this building just to also show how, let's say, the images process were following, let's say, different decisions. So it's not only about making competition with Olivier, but it's about also making other things. Next. So this is the first collage of the project during competition. Next. This is a model.
Yeah,
this is a bit like, let's say, the background or the kitchen when, let's say, Olivier start to work with image. And obviously, this is, I guess, images from Maxime again, not necessarily the good ones. But, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, I think it's nice to show that because you will see that it's not always perfect and as it looks, but it's, you will see the image from the competition that I don't like the image. It was so we can go to the next one. So that's the first test about the views, and also yeah, I mean at the end I'm also doing I'm hired by Baukunst architects to make images, and there is definitely a question of price inside that, and so sometimes okay you cannot afford like multiple images, and in that case there was this single image to do, whatever the reason. It's not the reason, it's like there is one image to do, so I remember that it for me it was something I kept in mind. Is like you do one image and then suddenly you, of course, you want to see more and more of the project in one image. So suddenly the focal length is like shortening. The field of view is wider. So, and this I don't like, because then you start to see distortion in the perspective, and even if it serves the project, it's something I don't like to work that way. But it's nice to show it, because as a reaction, so that was the competition image. You can move to the next one. I think that's the final image. And so there was also the question about showing the future road in front. That sometimes we don't really do that way, but at that time it was. So most of the time it's 3D here. And so as a reaction after the competition, like even a few days after that, I went back to all the images done by Maxime around the site, around the visits, and we can go to the next slide. Yeah, that's the video from Maxime, where we kept the same viewpoint, but that time it was a bit more framed. And when I see back at this image, there is a problem in the composition. Anyway, no, don't you think it's always like off center? But anyway, if we go to the next one, yeah. So exactly, that's the images. I think a few days after the competition, I went through the image of Maxime, and I say, okay, let's make this exercise of inserting the project in few of these images, even if you don't show the entire project. And so I did like 3 images on my own, and ironically, these images were used to communicate, right, on the project later. That was at the time of the competition.
Yep.
Like these images, and maybe the next one. Yeah, these ones and the last one. Yeah, these ones. Yeah, I think they were more used to communicate. So it was interesting, because then you see an image where you don't see the entire project, while the competition image was trying to show the entire facade, and here you don't show it. And it was for me a kind of shift of view and framing and viewpoint, and let's think differently, and let's try to work more in a photographic way towards the viewpoints.
Next.
Yeah, that's also views searching the framing on the project for the what's the name of the delivery of the document?
Building permit, I think.
Building
next.
permit. Yeah.
And go next.
And that's
this is also. I think we took this one just to show somehow also let's say this is a bit later, building permit stage, where we try to also capture, let's say, the change of the project. Next.
Yeah, that's the chosen view, and then after there is all the work to clean up the stuff. When I see it, it's like a bit strange, but it's okay.
Next. That was again like also how you. I mean, somehow it's almost that we preferred certain details at some point. Because it's like really fascinating how we can zoom in on certain image.
Yeah, but because after you show something else, but I remember that I get the model from the engineer. So the model was very precise. This cable and everything was there, because now we can see the existing one in the next slide. So that's the.
Yeah, that's basically the stage of more or less the stage of the construction of the building at the moment on the left side. And then by just stretching, putting your image next to it, I realized that was also not, very precise in terms of proportion. And obviously, since it's an engineer model, it's also...
Yeah, but what's different is the glass. You completely. In the building permit image, you want to tell about this transparency, and there is like light inside. But when you see the real, it's always like a difference in the glass reflection. But even if I guess in the real situation, you really feel this transparency.
Yeah.
Which you don't really feel.
Well, we're missing some elements. There is also a screen on the building.
Yeah.
Next. Well, that's the stage of the building at the moment. Next. Maybe another project we wanted to talk about, because it's also quite unconventional project. It's again a competition we won a few years ago in Paris La Défense. Next. Somehow the project is not too much about architecture, although it's very architectural. It's about commission we received to work in the basement in the infrastructure of Paris La Défense. As you probably know, it's a big financial neighborhood where you have a huge infrastructure underneath the tower, where you have all kind of facilities and transport. Next. And they call it volume résiduel. We see here more or less the perimeter. Next. And that's basically the foundation, so it's like historical images showing how the neighborhood has been built. Next. Next. And that's the current stage. Again, pictures of Maxime Delvaux. Where we were, it's kind of a process, competition process, a bit weird, where we had 1 year to think about the proposal. We didn't have any program, we just had the space. And then the client, since it's like hidden space, the client didn't even have floor plans. So we really spent 1 year with the client every month to present the project. So it's a bit of a competitive dialogue, they call it. Where we had both to explore the space, underneath space, and to make proposal. And this is basically where we also start the collaboration with Olivier. Next. So this is just to say the proposal is about cutting few space, bringing light into this basement, and providing access. Somehow the clients wants us to make this space accessible, not for commercial issues, but probably for a program like sport and culture. Next. So these are, let's say, the main architectural interventions. Next. With the context. Next. And then we asked Olivier, since it was also very difficult for us to understand the space, they are very imbricated, very 3D, on one side modelized, although we had pieces of 3D models, but to put the pieces together, and then to try to explore the space through images. Next. Of course, we were talking about light previously, but these are, let's say, also trying to get, here it's artificial lighting, so without any cut of the slab.
Yeah, it was also like light from like a building site type of light. And,
yeah. And then the main intervention, it's about not too much of adding things, but subtracting elements. I mean, this is a bit the project, but it's also how we work with Olivier to try to, let's say, what if we take out some piece of buildings there, some piece of the slab. We wanted to check about the light, we wanted to check about the situation. And then here it's obviously also first images about trying to feel the scale of the spaces. Next. Next. And I guess this is also a small movie we did to try to understand how the light was, let's say, coming inside the space.
Yeah, it was really an exploration. I remember it was if you could have done it with like video game types of rendering engine, it could have been also interesting. But, I mean, even for me, it was a difficult object because it's only it's not something you look from outside. It's like you have to look from inside. It's different from an interior space somehow. We have to go inside the model, and even to visualize it was really you almost have to walk inside to understand the different volume, and it was really a type of exploration, different stuff from exterior views.
And then we challenge a bit more Olivier. These are actually we can see movies. To say, can you also try to express the atmosphere? Atmosphere, not only the image of but also it's a space where you have dust, where you have obviously light, and we want to kind of convey this idea. And this is also coming from the image in motion images. I guess we have another image showing that.
Yeah, the dust was modeled in that one. Yes, can you...
If you go to the next one.
Yeah, nothing is moving apart just the dust, and the light is a bit changing, but yeah, maybe it's really particle hit by the light.
Next. I wanted also to show maybe this project, which is also kind of non-conventional project in a way that it's again a competition in Zurich for a very big building that you see here. Next. This is a bit the context. Next. I mean, as often in Switzerland, we try to optimize as much square meters we can build. And this is, let's say, the contour of the project, try to make big plateau, overlapping plateau, and playing with the light. So because of the depth of the plateau, we had to find a kind of a strategy to make the light entering within the building. Next. This is a kind of a light simulation. Next. These are the different floor plans. And then we also try to engage the discussion with Olivier, not only about the competition images, but also a bit like La Défense, actually, to try to understand the space we were creating. So, I mean, we are also using a lot of models that we don't show too much today, but at some point, I mean, the model is, we really love models as much as images. But sometimes for certain issues like La Défense and this project was super difficult to understand what we were creating as a space. Next.
Yeah, that was again the same methodology of like taking there was Maxime Delvaux photography as a starting point and visualize the project inside to determine which view could fit the best. And at the end, we didn't choose any, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not... Yeah,
if you can go next.
Yeah, that's an image from the project for the publication later. It was not from the competition, but still, it's the same model, but this project was like going through different life somehow. It after the competition, it's a lost competition. But then suddenly they start to come to other steps, to other different projects. So like that one for the publication, and the next one, that's something I was running on the side. I was interested in a bit like La Défense, like exploring the viewpoints. But at that time it was I was interested in the relation with photography, about the thematic of the accident, something you don't control, like what you have in street photography, or things like could happen in front of you, and or you take a snapshot or things like this, and in 3D everything is under control somehow. So I was interested to know how it's possible to introduce kind of randomness into the framing. So this is like 1,000 images of the space, so shot by a random camera moving inside the space, and so it just control like everything is random, the focal, the position, and everything. And I was trying to say, how can I sort them? And I sort them by visual complexity, which is the JPEG file size actually. So if you go to the next slide, so that's funny because that's the distribution of the kilobyte per images in JPEG. So there is like this kind of natural distribution of complexity, which is like open question for me. But next slide. So this is another way to arrange that image. I like to sometimes to work with. It's not a single image. It's like it's a multiplicity of image, and here they are arranged by color. There is a software that you can arrange images by color, and somehow it's telling almost something about the space, like the visual experience of the space. And so I like to see also sometimes the image as a kind of matrix, and as a yeah. And if you go to the next, and I was the process was also to select views from that 1,000 image, and I was expecting something from this randomness, and I found that there was multiple images with the ventilation pipes where they were exactly in the center of the image. So I think it was quite interesting regarding the kind of like the way the slabs are cut, that there was this kind of structure in the image. So if you go to the next, yeah, okay, that's. I was talking about another life, another phase of that project. It's also this is like a more recent work that I was initiating with Rory Gardiner, the architectural photographer, and this is like AI images that was generated by crossing some multiple sources, like the project of Zurich, it's geometry, and the photography from Rory Gardiner. So I asked him if it was interesting to train an AI model onto his images. So that's a series of images I done with that collaboration. So I mean, for me, it's really like kind of exploration. It's like it's investigating into that tool also. So if we go to the next slide, so it's out from the same series of the AI images. Yeah, you go to the next. So that, I mean, ironically, you can generate a lot of these, and here it's funny because the AI engine understood the multiplicity of the floor as a reflection. So that's why there is water. There is no water in the project, but he took it as a reflection rather than it was different floors on top of each other. So it's strange the way he sometimes hallucinate. And if you go to the next, yeah. So that's.
And maybe this is, I think, the last project, even more recent, again in Zurich. If you go to the next one, where the task was replacing somehow this building that you see at the back. It's basically a dormitory. This is too dense. The structure is not appropriate to make a school, so they want us to tear down this building to make a new building. Next. And somehow we kind of reuse a technique of saying that we will somehow cut this building into different pieces, as you see here, and we try to reassemble, let's say, the pieces of the existing building to make a new building. Next. So this is, let's say, again, very generic structure, where we put the structure at the outside of the building, and where we use, let's say, the reuse part of the cutting slab as a main structure. Next. So this is the competition model, where we try to, again, engage the reuse idea not as a kind of only opportunistic way to make architecture, but also to kind of, again, work as a primary way to let's say, invent or, let's say, interpret a new kind of structure. Next.
Yeah, and so that's a very recent work. It's regarding that project. So this is like everything you will see is like fully AI images of that project somehow, and there are. I mean, it's the way now I'm trying to deal with this. I'm dealing with this AI thing because it's try to also bring it into some kind of conception within the architectural project. So it's really like testing views, testing assembly, and you can do it kind of quickly. And so these images were done by training the AI onto the project. So it was the project was 3D model, and the process is like you take that 3D model, you render images of that project, and then you train the AI on that renderings, so that you don't see now the renderings, but you only see the results of that training. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I also like here this ambiguity where it's yeah, I mean the images is started from this rendering where you don't have all this detail, and then it's like kind of bringing it, all that stuff, the ground and the mess around. So it's almost like kind of drawing. It's almost like a photography of some of the around the project. So you can go to the next. So you can generate a different variation of that. So actually there is quite few. Next one, yeah, it's like different generation of that same training. And also that one where you try to, when you start to introduce like people, or I also did some images of portrait of people inside non-existing. Everything is non-existing, but like portraits of people into existing, non-existing project, and also it's interesting because now it's images. Even if I train the AI onto a kind of almost finished project where you have all the floors, he start to bring it somehow that what we wanted to see, also the process. So you have it could be like the first stage somehow, even if it's not true. And this, like also it turned out with that type of images where you see a stack of, could be a first step of the project or a mock-up project. So this is in process, so it's like a bit clumsy.
Thank you, yeah. Olivier.
Thank you very much.
For
Thank you.
this fascinating presentation. I'm not sure if there's someone that want to do some questions or has some thoughts about this presentation. Anyone? Timid? I'll start then, because it was fascinating, all the images, competitions, projects, images, and one thing is that I was thinking about is that most of the images were videos at the end. It's like this new step when the image is not enough and the video appears on the process. This is interesting that I noticed about even since the first Paris in drone and on the competitions, images of competitions, but also I was wondering how can this happen so fast, like on a competition stage, where we have this short timing to present a project, and then in parallel you can like produce these images that are they look like already constructed and very detailed, and how this transform on the next stages from the competition to the realization of this process, how this reflection process evolves, and how can you be sure it seems like the images look like very detailed, very, very confident, and how I was wondering how you deal with this, because at the end, from a competition to the realization of a project, there's like a huge wall between, no?
Yeah. Well, maybe first of all, it's very rare that we do moving images during competition. But anyway, I think with Olivier, it's also a question of collaboration. I guess we're working for now a long time, so we like to be surprised by the way Olivier challenged the project through the images. So it's also very heavy images, so it's not an image that you do in one night. So it's also an image that we have to program when we do a competition very early on. That makes also, for us, it's very helping, because at some point we have to be very precise about certain things. It's not that we deliver Olivier everything and then he does the image, and by, let's say, looking at the images of Maxime on the side first, looking at the work of Olivier. Now it's funny because they know each other also so well that they kind of prepare their work, let's say, and they sometimes come up with surprising surprises, let's say, about, you know, certain things that we haven't thought about it. But I think the collaboration, or type of collaboration we also kind of like, is the level of precision. We like in competition, it's not that we do tons of competitions. We like to be very precise about the way we choose competitions to try to, let's say, make sure that these are the good conditions to make projects. This is very important, not only about the images, but about the client, about other issues. And then by saying that we try to push the competition as far as possible, also in detailing. In Switzerland, you have to provide certain level of detail because you have also to prove that your concept could work in the construction, in the real life, although it's always a bit of a... And I guess we kind of like that, but we also like all the surprises that comes afterwards. I think the best moment for a project, at least for me, is when you have taken, let's say, the main decisions, sometimes very precise decisions, and then when you kind of lose control, and maybe a bit as a metaphor, it's not that I'm a big fan of AI images, but it's a bit, I think I see these images as a metaphor, as a way to kind of construct a certain frame, and then you kind of lose control about a lot of different things. I don't know if this is clear, and I think this is also maybe something we talked sometime about, you know, this idea of, let's say, as-found objects, or about collage of objects, to try to be precise about the way certain decisions, but then to lose control about others. And I feel that maybe in the discussion or in the project that we were showing, this is maybe kind of a crucial point, you know, like Olivier is kind of trying to kind of capture thousands of viewpoints of the same building. It's a bit what we try to do as an architect, being, okay, we set up, let's say, kind of a frame, and then we kind of explore all the possibilities that could happen within this frame. I could not really explain very precisely how we work, because it's depending on the agenda so it's very trivial at some certain point. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy.
But it's actually taking the same time as other competition I'm doing for other clients. But I think with Baukunst, it's a long collaboration already. Even if there is not like thousands of projects, it's like 10 years of collaboration. I don't know many projects, but not a lot at the end. But I mean, there is a lot of video also. But it's also like it's going quite smooth also because we trust each other, and I know. I like to go into detail. I like the detail that you produce. It's something for me. It's more easy to do than something else, and sometimes you reuse stuff also, like or even that project, like the wheels and everything. It's like parts of an actual scissor lift I bought on the internet, so it's not like I'm not doing everything. And or sometimes, you know, for a project, for example, for that project, I remember I spent quite some time of making the metal, like trying to find the right reflection and everything, and it's something I don't use now, but I remember I use that materials on other projects, not only Baukunst project, but so it's sometimes you spend some time on a project, you make something, and then you can reuse it. So that's the way you can gain some time on that. And also, I just wanted to also about photography. It's like, I mean, the most of the project we did together, it's like there is always a starting point with the photography. It's really important, and it's also the way I like to work, because like when you start with a kind of tabula rasa thing with which is nonsense right now, but no, it's more and more. It's somehow it's more easy to work with photography. You can go faster to something more realistic.
Yeah, what is very interesting is that three ways of collaborating, like the proper architect, Maxime Delvaux, sometimes, or Rory Gardner, and then the three ways of combining this transversality of the process. At the end, what is interesting, and also in this cycle, we were like wondering the weight of the image, but also this critical point of view of the transformation of the architecture, that we are like always exposed of plenty of images, and at a point you realize that is the rendering a tool for reflection and of this process of investigation, or is just like architectural production, the image? And I think in your case, for example, the example of La Défense, it's very interesting in the sense that the images are not the typical image that you will deliver to a client, no? Because you're exploring more about the atmosphere of the space rather than a concrete element. So I think it's very interesting. And then I'm not sure if someone wants to intervene.
And thank you very much for your conversation. So from a client point of view, you're dealing with these very hyper-realistic images, and of course, I would assume that for a competition, you would also offer standard plans and elevations. But what is the response by your clients to which impact does this small part, because you just deliver maybe 1 or 2 images there, for the overall storytelling of winning a competition is? Can you share some thoughts about this? The feedback from a jury or from the clients, how important your images are in relation to the overall functional aspects you have to deliver to solve a project?
I don't know if I will be unable to answer, but I think it's very cultural in a way. I don't know here in Spain, but for instance, when we work in France, when you deliver an image, if you try afterwards to make something else, because let's say you win the competition, it's like, I mean, the image is more powerful than any kind of other documents. So where we try to make, this is sometimes a bit dangerous in certain sense, because this is not too much the way we like, although we like to be precise. We also, of course, as all architects, wants to kind of travel a bit around the project. Then we have the other situation more and more. Now, often now in Switzerland, they don't allow images, or they just say, okay, we want to have only 1 images. In Belgium, we also have the case where you sometimes, because there was like so many, let's say, almost abuse about the use of images to try to deliver something that would be wrong at the end. That certain, let's say, procedure does not allow it. So it's quite funny to see how, I mean, we only do public buildings, so we only do competitions and public procedures somehow, and how, let's say, behind this procedure there are like different sensibilities regarding the images.
I would like to ask a question about the randomness, actually, because one of the things that you have mentioned in your presentation is that even though the images have certain ambiguity, right, like certain degree of randomness, the process of the creation of that image is very carefully thought, right? So I would like to ask, what is the decision-making criteria, so to speak, when you are in front of 1,000 images that are iteration from one another, right? And that you have to somehow have a very clear idea of what's the direction to follow, or it's the process completely random and eventually makes sense? I don't know. That's the question I would like to.
No, I mean, you're talking about this 1,000 cameras.
Well, like both with AI and also the photographs of Maxime. You have like thousands of iterations, right? It's somehow you have to have some certain ingredients there that you have an idea on in advance.
I think there is like some unconscious reason, and there is different criteria. It's could be of course about the project, like the way you want to tell something about the project. But for the rock thing, sometimes it's not that complicated. Also, the choice to make. It's also at the end you try to make a nice image. Also, it's not only so there is this criteria. There is the composition. And I mean, you have to mix all the criteria together on what you see from the project, what at the end the image itself, the composition. So it's a mix of everything. The decision is not random, but it's the way to curate the images but for this random camera, which is a different work also. I mean, I was also interested into the composition, but it was for me just also an experiment to test and to see. I think I did it for a recent project I show on Parabase. I also Swiss architect also did that random stuff. I mean, I was also doing, because at that time I was also working with Julien Orcade, with the photo he took of this project with the guy, the portrait and the blurry background. It was also a way to say, okay, that's the way things are done now in architectural visualization. We were trying to see also other way to show an architecture, not with a classical view, the 2-point perspective, and also even with the medium format. I mean, like architectural photography. He did some photo with flash photography. I mean, we were experimenting things, and it's also because of that I also relaunched the random thing, because it was also you want to be surprised also. That's what you are looking for, and this is what you are looking for in AI, to be surprised sometimes, and that's you want to be, so you pick from the surprise you get. That you also, and when you see the preview, because you receive the image with the project inside, sometimes you are surprised by the viewpoint. There is a viewpoint that you didn't expect to be interesting, and then suddenly that's an evidence. That's like, okay, that's the one. And but sometimes it's difficult. You struggle. You need to look for a lot of views, and it's every project is a different story.
Yeah, I think we are very lucky in a way that Maxime is also going there, and then Olivier is also, so they all have good eyes, let's say. And so I'm kind of relaxed somehow, even if we are part of the choice of things, that somehow, I mean, it's also not too much us that decide. And this is also a bit metaphoric, the way we do architecture is we make certain decisions, but we are very relaxed also about other things, like everybody has his own duty, the photographer, the image making, and we are architects somehow, so we don't have, of course, we have our own preference about things, but sometimes Yeah, but for example, Maxime, like there is some project where sometimes I do the first phase where I'm looking at viewpoints with a 3D Google, like the 3D model of Google. I'm looking for viewpoints with I know the lens that Maxime has, so I know what kind of thing he can shoot. And then after we had this meeting sometimes with Maxime, and then look at the views, and then after he's going on the site, and then it's a different story when you're on the site, because you suddenly, of course, everything is different from the Google. And and also he saw that preview with the project, so he has a kind of mental image of the project on the site. But I also don't want to show him too much, because I also want him to surprise everybody. So you don't want to tell him, okay, be there and shoot that. It's not I mean, it's really a collaboration, and so. And then after he's coming back with photos, I insert the image inside, and so there could be like another run. So it's really like a recursive process until finding the right one. I mean, we did it like for a recent competition. That process, like he's going there 2 times, and then I'm doing 2 times the preview. So it's a bit like going back and forth with the site. And this happens in a few days. It's like should go fast. But we did it for competition.
Well, I wanted to ask a last question, and also about the AI tool as a more broader question. And coming from the last sessions where we have talked to photographers, they all have these collaborations or commissions with architects. And I'm also interested on how do you see AI in that sense, in which I'm talking as someone that is not very familiarized or really understands the capabilities or the limits of AI, but as this new tool and new medium of representation, I'm also wondering, in your case, Olivier, if you see it, as a tool of that can become something else apart from representation of architecture, and in relation to photography, what do you think is the the place of this medium. No?
Yeah, AI, it's like something I'm kind of doing on the side as a parallel path. It's not like so I'm trying to experiment with it to see what's possible, and it's not that I'm scared that it will somehow take over my job. It's not this, but I really try. I mean, I did it for a recent competition. Try to bring in AI within the process of the competition, and actually some of the images were used in the final submission, and they were more used as a. I mean, I see it more as a twin. I mean, in the case of the last project, it's like the way now I'm doing it. It's like you have the real project, let's say, with the real measurement and everything, and then it's more like it's like a twin version of the project where you investigate and you're not looking at the big image of the project. You are more looking at some close-up, somehow of things, because you know that you will never get the full image of the project. Right now, it's not working that way. So I'm also again looking at some surprise in that, but it's not the main source of images. It's more like something it's an extra resource, and so I'm a bit I'm looking at it closely, but it's not something I cannot imagine it replacing my way of doing images. It's more like something on the side that you can use right now.
I think what I like somehow in these images is that they engage time in a certain time, in a certain ways, in a way that, and this is maybe also a subject that we are now trying more and more to engage in the project, not to look at architecture only through the lens of being a space, but also how the project change, how the project is perverted somehow in a way, and maybe this tool is unable also to bring this level of understanding. I mean, when I look at the last images that and then the others, is also it kind of question a bit again the position of the architect about not necessarily delivering a complete object or finite object, but also about thinking in a broader sense in regarding the time. And this, I think, this is kind of nice in opposite to the more finite images that we show. The question of accidents, doubts, and losing control. I find, I mean, maybe it's very intuitive what I'm saying, but it's also maybe a side that we would like to continue to explore. And it's also because it's unable to multiply the images, the different point of view, and instead of giving one viewpoint every time for like 2-3 viewpoints. Yeah, that's definitely something.
And also these images, they are not coming like this from nothing. It's like they have a story. I mean, they are coming from a real project, and it's not like they are not from nowhere. It's like, I mean, AI images is dealing with past, and it's only it's like it's not really about the future. It's like it's only making the image based on past image. It's not like so it's only what you give to this AI that's able to make something. So it's really about reusing also like collage or. I mean, it's all for us. It's all new, and I mean that's part of things I'd like to investigate and see how I can use it and how I can. I'm really interested in exploring that. So I don't know exactly how we can exactly use it, but it's not something I left on the side. I really work on it and try stuff.
I think there's another question.
I have a question about your relationship with realism in a way, because, and if you think if there is still space to push forward the limit of what is a photorealistic image, because I mean, I see this image and I have the impression that it cannot be more realistic than this. It looks like a reality. But then I think that it is the same sensation people had in the 90s seeing like CGI images or movies, and it was like saying, okay, technology cannot advance more than this. And then each epoch pushed this limit forward. Do you think that there is still space to make even more realistic images, or this would imply to completely change the paradigm and doing something completely different?
Well, I mean, you think that they are realistic, but I also see the default in each image I'm doing, and it's like the I know, and it's like you know, an unreachable, you know, always the, but yeah, sometimes you are stuck in front of a problem and you don't know how to solve it, and you don't know what's not working in an image, you don't know why it's not working with the photo and the color, so it's always like it's never-ending story. But yeah, I mean, you can make the most realistic project, the most realistic image, but I mean, for me, the most difficult thing is also to transform it to a real image, let's say, like a photography. That's my aim. That's the most difficult part for me. To just, I just not want to be. That's not just a visualization of something. It's also telling something, and it's something I need to work on. And that's so there. I still have. I am more interested into that rather than the realism of the image. But so that's more broad, open answer. I mean, it's.
Well, on our side, it's not the goal of the image. It's not to be as real as possible. It's just to see how we can challenge by making realistic images, how we ultimately try to, as I was trying to say, create intensity moment. And it's a kind of a nice, because when we start to make images, let's say 15 years ago, there was also different ways to make images. Some offices went more to abstraction, let's say, and less to figuration. And somehow we tried to explore from the very beginning on to say, why if we kind of try to go and challenge the idea of realism through images, not for the realism in itself, but just also to try to see if with this certain sense of reality, we can bring this moment that we look for, as well as, let's say, other offices would look for an abstract collage, for instance, to try to convey the idea of the project, but also to try to convey it's not about the space, but about, I would say, the intensity of space, or the intensity of what we do as an architect.
Yeah, no, I mean, about this realism, I remember that, the croquis, like I showed Arofric, if you look at the publication at the end, there is like images from the architect, Arofric. They did 1 or 2 renderings. And when I see that, it's like, it's crazy because it's really interesting, because the image they did are very realistic. I mean, it's if you don't really know it, you think it's a real photography. And this is a question I'm really interested in to know why it's working better than the one I did, where I spent a lot of time detailing screw and everything. And here they just arrive and then they just make a render, and then suddenly it's like, wow, it's like immediacy of the image, and it's so that's the question I'm asking, is like, so it's dealing with it's something outside realism, it's something about the strength of the image, and it's what I just say, like you can spend hours on the detail, but if the full picture is like crap, it's so I'm more trying to take distance from that and see how to make strong images, which is difficult.
The imaginary as danger, which is a long story in humanity. From many religions avoid images in And I was thinking that in many competition processes in public administration here in Catalonia, for instance, they they prevent to present any photorealistic image. Why do you think this? Because I think it's a rule that in Switzerland also it's applied, but more and more competitions, they prevent to present photorealistic images. Why do you think? What's behind this prevention?
I don't know. I'm not the administration. But I guess it's because I feel that it's also a tool, potential way to manipulate the idea of the project. No, it's probably. I mean, we can do so much things with images that is not necessarily true, if we may say the word. So I would say it's this. I mean, the way I understand it's more about that, because usually when you make a competition, at least the competition we do is we kind of present. Yeah, there is a jury. The jury is not only about architects, but it's a lot of people that doesn't know architecture, and it's probably super powerful as a medium, because people that are not architect, or some people could not, let's say, read some certain documents like the plans, and so they see the image and they see, this is what I want, you know. So it's much more immediate, and I think I would say it's a way to buffer the decision of a project. So it's both it's a bit protective. Yeah, sometimes it kind of work against the architect or the architecture.
Yeah, it could be a distraction also, and I remember in France once I received like recommendation for making images for a competition, and they were asking for no like sunset or things like could make the image warmer. Or that was like a few years ago. Like they were really specific about all the light. Like, no, it was the time when it was some images were made from collage or like, and then there was some office doing like crazy lights, like apocalyptic, like almost like two suns, or you know. So they were really asking like no sunset, no.
Yeah.
No people, no smiling people.
Yeah. On certain other cases, you are asked to have movies within the buildings, very precise movies. So it's even worse than what we try to do. It's like every space, or usually sometimes for big competitions in Switzerland, you have really the trajectory of the camera described. So you have to move from the entry, then to go to the auditorium, this and that. So I think the debate is not over. It's kind of, it's still open.
Yeah, but there is some competition where they don't want any images, they want a text, which is, I guess, fine. I mean, you win competition without images, and it's probably they don't want to be distracted by anything. They want to have some kind of objective. Is it that they want to have some kind of probably objective opinion on the project, or because it's a lie. I mean, when you make an image, you lie anyway. So it's like you make it's a complete lie somehow.
Can I do another question? I want to go back to the process, because we were talking a lot about the result, and I'm just wondering if do you collaborate as well during the process of thinking the architecture, or do you use the image during the process of like pre-thinking the project? And in the same way, do you use the EA now for this process when you mix the first images and some random results that you don't control? Because here we were talking all the time about the intensity of the result, but we were never talking about the process. And as an architect, we work a lot with the images during the process. Mm-hmm. Do you do it?
Yeah, but I mean, we try to explore through the presentation a bit like the different ways making images, and we also, I didn't say it, but we like to take our time to make architecture. And then sometimes by doing images for competitions, we have to be fast, as Olivier was saying, to say, okay, you have 2 days to choose the viewpoint, this. And this is also the beauty of making competitions. It's like the intense moment where you have to make a lot of decisions. And this is probably why we kind of rework the images afterwards. Sometimes we are lucky, we win the competitions, we are unable to kind of precise the images or explore other things. Usually during competition, let's say because of time, the margin is very but what I like is because we like precision project, we like to deliver precise project, we are not unable to draw every things. And then sometimes we are very nicely surprised that Olivier kind of draw or make the gaps, of things. And then ultimately that influence, if we go to the next stage, the way we do architecture on certain details or certain ways about the materials, so sometimes we had, let's say, also a nice surprise. And this is what we look ideally from Olivier, that when he delivers an image, it's just not a kind of a service provider. He's also providing a way to look at the building, to maybe sometimes resize the building. It happens sometimes to say it doesn't work, but also more, let's say, about the materiality, about the way we detail the building. It happens quite a lot of time that we challenge this during the competition, or let's say afterwards, that we want to check. We haven't shown for the frame project that is under construction, the big building out of steel. We also ask Olivier to make inside images to understand also about, let's say, very trivial decision about mechanical pipes and how we, let's say, design the techniques in general, how we deal with this. But again, to have I think to have a space, to have this kind of collaboration, we need to have the time. And to have the freedom, and sometimes the freedom of being an architect is, we have to create this space of freedom, and this is sometimes what happens with the different images, or some images that you show, that we show tonight.
There is, some of my clients, it's more straightforward. You send me the model, and I just make the image. But with you, it's more. There is even if it's fast, there is this kind of discussion on some detail, and the image help them to change some stuff or change the details. So there is a few discussion, but it's what I said at the beginning. It's ambiguous. My position is ambiguous because I wish I could follow the project from the beginning, but then it's obviously economic cost. I could not follow all the competition, but I will be interested. You understand? It's so I'm not working in their office, but I have other clients. So, but that will be a nice way of working. But yeah, it's difficult to put it in reality. This type of work.
Thank you again for this presentation. And we can continue this conversation outside with some drinks that we have. So thank you the rest for being here. Thank you, ERCO, for making this happen, and La Virreina to hosting us. And let's continue outside. Thank you.
Thank you.